Everybody, here's what we have coming up today on GoJo and Golic. First of all, GoJo's back. That is great. So Senior and I will have him joining us. Okay, first up, absence of Love. Okay, everybody, Jordan Love not going to play without pay. We will get into the contract negotiations that are apparently currently underway. And the king, he cares. Okay, LeBron having to save Team USA again. They narrowly escaped Germany. And today's guests, we got some good ones coming up for you. Bears tight end Cole Kmet, Oregon OL Marcus Harper II. All that and more coming up today on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield at the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review it. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKings network. I do want to get to what's going on with Jordan Love. I think a real sign of organizational health that we're seeing actually play out in front of us in Green Bay, especially compared to what's gone on with their ex as of late, which we will talk about. And I want to talk about the take in sports media, and I should say in sports in general, because it did not come from us, that has aged like spoiled milk faster than any take I've ever seen in recent memory. But yeah, guys, I'm back. I survived 24 hours in a bunch of different airports, and I got to ask you guys this because this is my biggest takeaway. So I was supposed to go out to Jordan Cornette, our friend of the program here, former Notre Dame basketball great. He has a great charity golf outing in Cincinnati. I was supposed to go out and play in that. Tried to fly and do this, got rerouted a bunch and ended up stranded, having to spend the night sleeping on the ground in the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. Did you guys know about all of these sleeping mats that they've got in the airport? Because apparently it was common knowledge for everybody else who was just laid out on these mats that the last time I saw was in kindergarten for sanctioned nap time there.
Did you, is it the mat just in Minneapolis or in any airport?
I have no idea. All I know is I had never seen these mats before, and I saw one or two at first, and I was like, all right, maybe someone just found these in a corner. A little kid was sleeping on it, and I was like, that's cool. Help the kids out first. They're the most vulnerable of our population here at the airport. And then I was texting my mom later on, and I was mentioning the fact that I was going to go down and take a nap on one of these benches before my flight. And she said, "Oh, did you get one of the mats?" As if this was common knowledge that the mats existed. So at GoJo and Golic on Twitter, did you know about the airport mats? I didn't know that was a thing, and I saw hundreds of them because, again, that tech glitch really seems to have hit Delta harder than most, and Minneapolis-St. Paul, a Delta hub, looked a little bit post-apocalyptic.
Is this like a yoga mat looking thing?
Yes.
Okay.
It's like the mats you used in kindergarten where it's you unfold them. They're like trifold mats, and they've got a little bit of cushion to them, and you just lay them down. And I literally remember one of my first conscious memories as a human being is of nap time in my kindergarten in Arizona, and I got to use these same mats, and this is the first time I've seen them again out in the wild, and I did not expect it to be in this setting. So other than that, wouldn't recommend sleeping overnight in airports, wouldn't recommend flying right now if you don't have to. But if you do and you get caught in a jam, apparently there's mats.
I did not know that. Last year, after a Cowboy game, without getting into the details, I had to spend the night in the hotel. In the airport, and there were no mats. I didn't see any mats. I slept on the hard floor, laid down the jacket, and used my backpack as a pillow and laid down. What I found out, though, and I should have done there, but I didn't, is you know what you do is you go find a kid play area and sleep in that, because that ground is softer. You know, they make it softer so kids bounce a little more than just land and hurt themselves. So the area is softer. There is no kids overnight playing in it. So you go to that and just lay down in that. I think you could have a little bit more comfort than a regular floor.
I'm just trying to think in my mind what's dirtier, the airport floor, the airport mats, or the floor of the kids zone.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can't
seems
care.
like the final boss.
What are you going to do? I mean, you're going to lay in it. You got to lay somewhere. You got to do something. So I'm just going to lay in it. I can shower later, a couple days later or whatever. But I'm going to lay. Yeah, I'm kidding, Jesse. I just knew they'd get a rise out of you. I'm going to lay on something soft. I don't care where it's been or who's been on it or how dirty it may be. I am looking for comfort at that moment.
I was going to say, I'm not going to lie, in the airport, comfort to me over everything. We were all laying on the ground in there, and that's not clean ground. I understand that in the airport, but man alive, the exhaustion of working through flight delays, because cancellations, I figured out, are fine. They're clean. They're decisive. Right. It's when they string you along until 1:30 in the morning and then cancel the flight when you were told the pilots were going to arrive and they're right here and they're coming. And I heard all measure of examples that ultimately ended up with it being canceled later on. So again, happy to be back through that. Happy to find out that there are at least airport mats in Minneapolis, St. Paul, which in most days is one of my favorite airports on earth. Dad, in this day was hell on earth.
Mike, we when you were gone yesterday, Jesse and I talked about our worst travel trips, and Jesse's worst trip involved having to ride in a car and then a train to get to a plane while she was pregnant. But when she got to the plane, she found out she got upgraded to first class and the lay down seats. That was her worst. That was her worst. That was her worst. That a little bit of travel issue getting to the airport, but when she got to the airport, she got upgraded to the lay down first class seats.
Yeah.
In her defense, she said she was pregnant at the time. So all of those other things in the lead up do seem pretty bad. It's just that Jesse reeks of prestige and wealth and wonderment so much that it was always going to have that kind of ending. It wouldn't be a Jesse story if it didn't have that involved. So honestly, thrilled for you there. What a fun ending to that story. I did not get a lay down seat on the way back home. Instead, I just found my way to the loving arms of the mats.
We have a live look. We have a live look of you. Yeah.
That would have been awesome. Instead, I was on a bench that was way too small with myself, but it did have a cell phone charger on it. And we made it back here. So I am in some decent shape. And I got to laugh because as we were getting ready to do division previews around the NFL, there was a store in the Minneapolis airport that sold Vikings gear. It had one T-shirt that said, optimistic since the date of inception of the Vikings on it in the Vikings colors. And right next to it, it said one that said disappointed since. So they had you covered on all the feelings there. We'll have you covered on all the divisions coming up here. We got a little look at the AFC North today. But before we do that, Dad, let's go camping in Green Bay, where, as we said before, Jordan Love is in the midst of a hold in. He is at Green Bay training camp. He's bopping around there in meetings. You see him out on the practice field. He's just not practicing himself as they are working out the details of a contract extension for a guy that's got one real year as a starting quarterback in the NFL that went so incredibly well, given what they drafted him in the first round, that they're probably going to make him one of the next $50 million quarterbacks in the league, as that has now become the new standard. So, Dad, first and foremost, let's start with that. Your comfort level in the Green Bay Packers potentially making Jordan Love one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, despite one of the smallest sample sizes we'll see for a quarterback in this situation.
You know, it's a great timing award, right? They give him that mini extension. So he made about 11 mil last year. Or is going to make 11 million this year with that mini extension, but he's looking to sign. I mean, dude went 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. I did a game early with them last year for Westwood One, and then I did the playoff game against the Cowboys. And you could certainly, and obviously watching a bunch of tape as you're going to do games before that, you could see his growth and just how comfortable he got, Mike, in the pocket, making his reads, because he was throwing to incredibly young receivers. This was not a veteran crew by any stretch of the imagination. So, he's just getting going in his career, throwing to new receivers, and he just started clicking so well, reading, comfort in the pocket, making good reads. Good completion percentage was just under 65%. So I loved the strides that he made. And we know how it is. Is he the best quarterback in the league? No. Is he going to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league? Yes. He may be the highest for until the next one, or maybe right there in the second or third slot. That's just the way it is with that position. That way, and we know it. So, and the thing about it is, you mentioned it early on about how to kind of run this in the organization. They're doing it well. They're all on his side. They say they understand. All is good. He's there participating in everything. He was there for all the OTAs, participating in minicamp. He's doing a hold in and just not going to subject himself to any kind of an injury until he signs a deal. And Green Bay seems to get that and understand that, and they're going to work it out. So with quarterbacks, you throw it out. You throw out the norm and just say, okay, he timed it up perfectly to where he's going to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. And, more power to him.
I guess when I say forget the context, though, you yourself, based on what you saw, it sounds like are pretty comfortable, because I would agree. Yeah. I would agree that I'd be comfortable, especially if we frame it, and I saw this on SportsCenter, and we'll see it on a million other outlets, of the framing of this, where right now you've got three quarterbacks with outstanding contract-related issues in Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers, and Tua Tagovailoa in Miami, which has been awfully quiet in the last couple of weeks. I'd have to imagine that deal's coming up close. But, Dad, when I think of the quarterbacks that I'm most comfortable potentially paying this level of money to going forward, Jordan Love's at the top of that list. And I understand it's somewhat precarious because Dak Prescott, you've got this long history now, this big resume where you know pretty much exactly what Dak Prescott is. And we saw last year when that's really humming, it could be pretty good. It could be borderline MVP good. Jordan Love seems to have that, and then that little extra wiggle. He's younger. He seems to be on the rise. You're buying more of what's to come rather than what's been. And I think in the NFL, that's a pretty rare opportunity at this position to say, hey, we're paying you now, and we think this could actually get demonstrably better as you bake with our young receiving core. So all the things you mentioned were great. I heard Minicamp mention this yesterday. Mitigated sacks really well in the pocket, especially over the back half of last season. Did a really good job because quarterbacks play a pivotal role in that. And he's just mobile enough to get you out of trouble in a lot of those areas that I think that works. But I think your point about the way the organizations responded is huge. This was the Packers GM, Brian Gutekunst, yesterday talking about this entire situation with Jordan Love. And listen how comfortable he sounds.
This is something we're all working on, and we certainly understand where he's coming from. We'd like him to be out there. It's important for him to be out there. Obviously, you guys know how important practice is, and working with his teammates. So, but as of now, until we get that resolved, he will not be practicing. He'll be taking part in. He reported last week. He's taking part in everything else.
And so, yeah, we're completely comfortable and we completely understand where he's coming from. Matt LaFleur echoed the same sentiment yesterday, said, I know how Jordan prepares. And so, while again, they'd love him on the field, they understand this side of it. And to see that, Dad, just all of a sudden reflected by what we've seen go on with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers this offseason, their ex who's over there and went on the trip to Egypt that he apparently told the team about, but Robert Saleh still felt that it needed to divulge publicly that was not an excused absence from the minicamp that they had, and all these things that caused public friction in some people's minds unnecessarily versus what you've got in Green Bay now, which is this understanding that, to your point, they know they're going to pay him. He knows he's going to get paid. The devil's in the details, and so we're not going to make this something that becomes adversarial. So you almost have to applaud Green Bay for sort of learning from the last time around, because we know there were some things that they did organizationally mishandle about communicating Jordan Love's draft pick to Aaron Rodgers at the end of that last regime.
Yeah. Listen, it's just, as I said, this is a position where you're going to have to pay, even though it may seem outlandish to say, well, he's not the best quarterback in the league at this point, but he's going to make best quarterback money. We see that. Patrick Mahomes isn't the highest paid quarterback, and he's the best quarterback in the league. It's the way it works in this league. What he is going to be, you look at their 6 players with the averaging over $50 million a year from the bottom to the top: Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, Joe Burrow, and Trevor Lawrence. The top one there being Trevor and Joe at 55 mil apiece. And age-wise, Trevor Lawrence is 25, and that's what Jordan Love is. They're the 2 youngest. Everybody, Jared Goff is 30. Lamar Jackson, 27, then a couple of 26-year-olds and Hurts and Herbert. So you got a young quarterback as well you're paying. And like I said, you're going to pay, because the question is always, where else the hell are you going to go? Is Sean Clifford going to be your starter? Is Michael Pratt going to be your starter when you have a team that you feel can compete in that division? So this is just we all know where this is going to end up, and let's just keep it amicable until it does. And both sides seem to be doing that incredibly well.
They seem to be doing that incredibly well. On the other side, Jesse, we did mention Aaron Rodgers of it all, and we got to hear more from Aaron Rodgers, because don't we always, as we're coming off Tahoe, he went on Pardon My Take, and we got some interesting insight.
Yeah, take a listen to what he had to say. And he really downplayed the entire situation, despite what Robert Saleh said about it being an unexcused absence.
They can arbitrarily put a tag on whatever week of OTAs they want. So this is the minicamp week, which makes it somehow more mandatory than the other weeks. But it was an OTA schedule. That's how how words can be a little deceiving from time to time. You can make a story out of the fact that I missed a minicamp when it was really 2 OTA days.
Right.
Interesting.
That came to the first 10.
So, guys, he used the time to vacation in Egypt, which was apparently a bucket list vacation destination. Not sure what was, Egypt was there a month ago. But here's the thing. He's talked so much about how you can't have distractions, and then it's classic Aaron Rodgers. He goes and does something like this. It's obviously going to be news.
Yeah, it's going to be news. They're going to talk about it, but I think both sides handle this poorly. Aaron's sitting there trying to talk around the fact that it was a mandatory minicamp. You can lay it out however you want. There is a mandatory minicamp within the OTAs. And yes, they can put it on whatever weekend they want, and they did. And it was out there, and you knew when the weekend was. So you can say the practices are different, whatever, but OTAs aren't mandatory. Minicamp is mandatory. That's the bottom line. So you can't parse that around and say, oh, they just picked an arbitrary weekend to make it mandatory. It was in stone. You knew when the mandatory weekend was. That being said, I agree that if Aaron Rodgers chooses to miss that because of a vacation to Egypt, it's not going to affect anything. It's not going to affect their season at all. But then Robert Saleh comes out and says it's unexcused and doesn't really say where he is. So I think both sides, unlike Green Bay, where both sides handle this maturely, I don't think that happened with the Jets. I think both sides did not handle this very well. Instead of Aaron just saying, you know what, it was a mandatory minicamp. I had a scheduled vacation that happened to fall on that. It was a bucket list. I wanted to go, and I went. It's as simple as that. Not trying to explain around when you have mandatory minicamp or what kind of practices they are. The bottom side, it's mandatory.
I think the only thing with that is, Dad, to his point, they could have moved it. Diana Rossini came out and said as much, and that was kind of the part I agree is an organization not accommodating its stars' need usually isn't what happens. It's kind of like being in first class in The Wedding Singer. Since we usually let our first class passengers do pretty much whatever they want, this is kind of how that goes. So I was surprised by that. And I don't know, Dad, to me, that was kind of Robert Saleh showing at least some frustration, right, at the way that the power dynamic's been set up in New York. It's a marked change from the way that he entered that organization. And that clearly, that kind of move doesn't happen unless someone is frustrated with exactly how it's organized inside the building, in my mind.
I agree that they could have moved it, and they could have, they could have taken care of that whole situation by moving it. Absolutely. But they didn't. So you want to put that on the Jets, and then the explanation is Saleh on the Jets, yes. And then I put the explanation of Aaron trying to talk around it to say, well, it's kind of not really mandatory. I blame both sides. But at the end of the day,
I think he's just differentiating there that those practices aren't anything special. Honestly, the explanation that I would put on Aaron's side is, why didn't you just say this before? Like having this, will he, won't he, or having the absence actually be unexplained going into it when he could have just said all of this beforehand, and there would have been a lot less mystery and palace intrigue surrounding this. That to me is the thing that doesn't make any sense.
I agree. Both sides could have just came out and Aaron said they had a mini camp. I had something scheduled. I was going on it because I think the practices are just like OTAs, which they probably are, but there still is a determination that one is mandatory. I think he talked around that, and I don't think Saleh handled it well. So, yeah, I think there was a failure on both sides on this situation.
Just go to Egypt a month ago. Problem solved.
Or just don't talk about any of this in public and just sit behind closed doors and figure it all out. But what do we know? We're just a functioning outfit here. Coming up next, though, let's get to the bottom of what the hell's going on with USA basketball. And the worst take in sports rears its head again. Next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We have got to talk about Team USA men's basketball. So we had the near W with South Sudan, who almost got the win. And then we also had another near miss on Monday night versus Germany. So LeBron James, in a repeat of the South Sudan game, had to come out and put Team USA on his back. They managed to eke out the win, 92-88. LeBron James scoring the last 11 points for Team USA. Fellas, this was another close one. It looks like we might have some issues here with Team USA. Germany also the reigning FIBA World Cup champions, though, I will say.
Well, I was going to say, Germany's a lot more defensible, close game, given the fact that you look down their roster, and in addition to being a country that is certainly well-known for this, well-known for having a very cohesive, experienced core, you've got NBA guys up and down that roster. You've got Wagner's on that team. You've got Dennis Schroeder on that team, Daniel Theis. So there's plenty of guys that they've seen play meaningful time over in the NBA. But, Dad, this was a close one again that LeBron James sort of had to bail Team USA out on, and I know you guys talked about it yesterday, but I want to just hear him say it again. Joel Embiid's take from that New York Times article continues to age like spoiled milk. Here is Big Joe talking about LeBron James and this old-ass Team USA roster.
The talent that's on the US team, you also got to understand, like, most of those guys are also older. Like, LeBron now is not the LeBron that was a couple of years ago. So it's a big difference. So I think people get fooled by the names that are on paper, but yeah, those names have been built throughout their career, and now they're older, so they're not what they used to be.
So listen, I don't totally disagree with him. Like, before this got started with the Olympics, I had a similar take, which is, hey, this roster looks great on paper, but was probably at its best 5 or 6 years ago. That's not an indefensible take. To say it while you're on the team with the guy that's still out there putting on the feedback every time you need something important to happen. Like, Dad, you always said, you don't need a C on your chest to know who the captain is when you watch the way a team operates in almost any setting, in almost any sport. The leaders tend to stand out. It really becomes pronounced when it's on the court in these waning moments of the game. We always talk about in crunch time. We did this with the Boston Celtics this season. Who's going to have the ball in their hands when it matters most? And every single time for Team USA as of late, it has still been LeBron James. So LeBron, I don't know if maybe Joel was trying to Miyagi this thing and motivate LeBron as they got going in this, and now he's internalized the age slander, and he's just decided to weaponize it against everybody else, because when it matters most, that guy still looks like he is the best player on this team.
Yeah, and that quote came out before the South Sudan game when LeBron hit the layup with 8 seconds ago. And you're right. Technically, he's right. You look at the Dream Team back in '92. Larry Bird was 35. Magic Johnson was 32. Considered old then as opposed to now. Then you had a 30-year-old in John Stockton, Clyde Drexler, a couple of 29-year-olds as well. That was considered older then than it is now. Now they truly are, with Steph being, 35, 36, LeBron being 39. Definitely older guys. But with LeBron scoring the last 11 points for this team, going 4-4, just taking over. It's what a testament to him and his work ethic to still get this thing done. Yeah, Embiid, the statement seems ridiculous, but the statement is in fact true. On paper, when you read it, it's true. But then coming off the heels of 2 games, one immediately after that where LeBron bailed you out, and then another one a couple days later where LeBron bailed you out, it kind of hurts the argument a little bit. But he's playing, for the oldest guy on the team, he's playing some great ball right now.
Yeah, it's the classic case of might makes right. And for LeBron James, going out there and playing his best, and Joel Embiid right now, listen, still kind of working his way back in, has looked a little sluggish. We know dealt with injury in the NBA postseason here, and the bigs have been a big area of focus. International basketball's got the different spacing. There's no defensive 3 seconds, and so all these things affect him and Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo a lot more. And Joel had some moments in this last game. Defensively, he pinned one of those shots off the backboard. I think all those guys, him, Bam, and Anthony Davis, the team had 7 blocks, I believe, against Germany in that game, got their hands on their ball and was active. But that's the kind of quote where unless you're currently the guy that's the best player on the team, probably not a thing you can say on this old-ass team where, like, Dad, they're still waiting. Kevin Durant missed all of the exhibition games in the lead up to this. He is the most tenured and experienced international basketball player on the Team USA squad. And by all accounts, you listen to the basketball people that know his game in particular and his experience with this style of basketball, because stylistically it's different enough, is huge for this team if they're going to get him back. But that's a big if for a guy that we know has experience and bad experience and big moments with calf injuries that I'm sure he's being extra cautious with now as they head into this. So this is probably going to be the majority of the team we got. We know they went 10 deep in this last game. Tyrese Halliburton rode Pine. And this is probably going to be an Olympic Games where, because of the proliferation of the 3-ball, and you look at Germany, I think they attempted 28 more threes in this game than Team USA did. South Sudan shot the lights out of the gym, especially in the first half in that game. It opens you up to this kind of stuff a little bit more. Tom Ziller did a great newsletter about this on Good Morning Let's Basketball, how that's kind of leveled the playing field. So we were all getting ready for this dominant run to a gold medal for Team USA. Dad, I think they'll still win it, but we're definitely going to have to hold our breath a lot more than most people anticipated.
And I think it's because of what you said, the three-pointer. Go to South Sudan. They were 14 of 33. Shayak was 6 of 12 in that one for South Sudan. And Team USA was 7 of 28, the greatest shooter of all time. Steph Curry was 3 for 9. Jason Tatum, 0 for 3. Anthony Edwards, 1 for 7. Drew Holiday, 0 for 3. So that definitely could be, if there's going to be a downfall, is probably going to be in the three-point ball, which when you got Steph shouldn't really happen. But, you know, the rest of the world is knocking down big-time threes. I still think they're going to win it. Maybe not as dominantly if we're going on this exhibition. How much should we go on this exhibition? I don't know. But the 3-ball could be the downfall if there is going to be a downfall. But I don't expect there to be.
I don't either. Team USA is still the overwhelming favorite to win gold at DraftKings Sportsbook at -500, so you could potentially take that to the bank still. Dad, while we're talking Olympics, and we were talking football in the first segment here, did you see the news about Jonathan Owens, that the Bears have given him permission to miss a week of training camp to go watch his wife Simone Biles compete in Paris in the Olympic Games, likely going to be her last games? You understand why he'd want to be there, Dad, but you're the one that pointed this out. Not without risk. This guy is competing for a backup job in Chicago at this point, playing safety. So as someone that spent your life, you know, competing in a similar station in the NFL, missing a week of training camp's not nothing. That's husband of the year material.
It really is. But boy, could it come at a cost? He comes over free from Green Bay now at the Bears. Brisker and Byard are the two safeties, as you mentioned, fighting for a backup role, special teamer as well, big time special teams player. Maybe he's pretty secure in his spot, but that's what a pull that is, right? Your wife, whether no matter who your wife is, if you don't know her, or Simone Biles, one of the greatest of all time, you know, to go watch your wife compete in the Olympics, which is the ultimate. And the Bears were great about it. Matt Eberflus was great about it, saying it's the Olympics. You got to respect the Olympics and what it's about. But man, that is definitely husband of the year material, and definitely taking a little bit of a chance here, unless he knows something or feels more secure than maybe it looks there. Maybe he is. But man, I that would be it, because you're right. That was my kind of lot in life. That would be tough to miss a week of training camp.
You know what would be tougher than that? To be the Bears and to cut him after this. So maybe that's the security, is knowing that, hey, I don't know if the Bears are going to cut Simone Biles' husband after she goes over and likely represents the country incredibly, as she always does. So Jonathan Owens, proud of him. He's come a long way since that podcast appearance everyone dragged him for, where he said he didn't know who Simone was when he originally started talking to her, to now saying, yeah, I'm going to leave my job for a week to keep the main thing. Smart move from a smart man. We appreciate that. Speaking of smart man, let's get really smart and bring another offensive lineman in here. Coming up next, Marcus Harper, Oregon Ducks offensive lineman, and joining our ranks as podcaster. Going to stop by next and talk about the Ducks move to the Big Ten and more next here on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and delighted to add some beef to the chat right now. Actual beef. Me and Dad are washed and we're skinny now, so we can't go out here and move people. So to help us do that, Marcus Harper, Oregon Ducks star offensive lineman, and the host of the Big Mark Show now in collaboration with Sports Illustrated, kind enough to join us now. And we'll get to the move to the Big Ten, the upcoming season. You guys are days away from camp right now. But good morning, Marcus. How you doing? And talk to me about the decision to become a podcaster now, man. What's going on?
Well, number one, appreciate y'all for having me. And number two, I've always known I could be in front of the camera and add some flavor to it. Kind of just waiting for the opportunity. You see a lot more NFL guys doing it now earlier in their career, especially linemen too, because, we don't get the cameras on us as normally as receivers and running backs do. Kind of Jason Kelsey was kind of pioneer kicking that trail off and seeing what he's done with New Heights with him and Travis. And I knew I had that same level of personality, the same excitement. And so I was like, well, I didn't want to wait till I was in year 12 of my NFL career to start that. So opportunity presented itself, and Big Mark Show kind of was birthed, and got episode 1 out. I was a couple weeks ago and working on episode 2 here soon. So it's a blessing and it's an honor. It's actually a fun thing to do when I'm not focused on football 24/7.
So if and when I should say people tune into the Big Mark Show, what are they going to hear? What is the pod about?
You just get a different perspective on a lot. You get an inside perspective of what happens around in the Oregon Ducks locker room. I know a lot of people can try to put stuff together from the outside world. This is like my perspective, my point of view of what goes on in the locker room. And I think the first guest is someone that you guys wouldn't expect to be talked about or to be in the interview. But I think once you get to know him, it'll be a warm welcome.
There we go. He's got the great tease already for content.
Yeah.
We got a professional amongst our ranks right now. So everyone is going to be excited about that. And I can see why. You guys have been one of the best programs in college football for a while now, coming off a stellar season last year and getting ready to make the move into the Big Ten this year. So take us inside the locker room on that. What's the conversation been like as you guys get set to embark on this new journey in one of the biggest conferences in college football?
Yeah, I mean, we're excited, obviously. We know that we were dominant in the Pac-12 last year, obviously coming up short in a couple games, but we know that this move to the Big Ten is what everyone wants and what everyone needed, and we're excited for the challenge, too. We're honestly just focused on fall camp right now. We know how long of a grind that is. For about a month out, you're kind of just in complete solitude with your guys, just sweating and practicing and doing all those things, getting ready for week one. So we're focused on that. And then as the games start to dwindle down, we'll start focusing on our opponents. But, I mean, we were excited when we found out. I think it was like the middle of last season. And ever since then, we've kind of been chomping at the bit. And when you get like a preview of our jerseys and we kind of walk by and we see the big logo, it's kind of a surreal moment, especially for me because I grew up watching Big Ten football.
So as you guys prepare for the season, we know of individual awards, the Heisman, Biletnikoff, all the different awards for different positions. Does your O-line as a group talk about the Joe Moore Award to be the best O-line in college football? Is that discussed amongst you and your fellow linemen?
It's so discussed that it's a part of our daily ritual. We open up with a prayer every day in our O-line room. And one of three things that we talk about accomplishing every year is that Joe Moore Award championship. We do understand that last year, again, we fell up short with that goal. And so we know we have one of, if not the best talented offensive line room in the country. And so we know that that's something we know we can get back to. And so, John, honestly, we just continue to train for that every single day. We don't look too far ahead, towards the end of the season, but we know that the things that we do every single day will lead up to us eventually holding that trophy at the end of the year in the O-line room. So we're just excited for it. And we just can't have, we're so happy to start the season so we can get to that moment where we're sitting down holding that Joe Moore Award.
And certainly you guys up front have been what's driven this team going back to when Mario Cristobal was here, but certainly now through Dan Lanning's tenure as well. And you got an important job this season because you got a new quarterback coming in. Bo Nix the last couple of years, obviously a stellar finish to his college career. What has stood out to you in the early goings here about Dylan Gabriel, a guy you've seen play college football, has played big-time football, but now in your guys' locker room with you?
Yeah, his big arm ability is second to none. Like you said, having Bo last year, you kind of understand what that first round talent's like, and to see Dylan come in and kind of seamlessly make that transition. Him and Dante both making that seamless transition is kind of a surreal moment. A lot of guys throughout their college careers barely get blessed with a quarterback to Bo's caliber. And I've been blessed to have a quarterback like Anthony Brown, Bo Nix, and then I got Dylan Gabriel, and I got Dante Moore. So it's a surreal moment, and he's a great locker room personality. Like Bo was obviously a very stoic, very stern professional. Obviously breaking when he need to, but Dylan 24/7 is cracking jokes. Always just talking to me, Jeff, Tez, whoever. So it's a different switch up, obviously, in the locker room, and I think we need that for sure. And it's helped out a lot. And I think again, going into this camp, it's made it easier for him to kind of make the transition with the players, and it's made us get well accustomed to him and kind of make that transition a lot easier.
So through your tenure so far at Oregon, you've played with 7 players who are offensive linemen now in the NFL, including Penei Sewell. So how has that helped you watching these players go from the collegiate level to the pro level, and just how good they were in your years, younger to older?
Yeah, obviously as younger, you're kind of a fan. Again, seeing Penei, I was there literally a couple months before he declared for the NFL, and then to see him go, what it was like 5th or 6th overall, if I'm not butchering it. And then just along the years, you see a lot of other guys get pulled up on the way. Salah, Alex Forsythe, TJ Bass, and then with me playing that next year with Jackson, it was understanding that's the standard. Knowing I can get there, knowing what I'm capable of. I know I'm the next offensive lineman on that chart, on part of that group to kind of get pulled up to the NFL. And it's just a standard now. So I'm just excited again for the season and the opportunity we got my last year. I wouldn't want to go out no other way.
the standard around Oregon has certainly been well known for a while. And the standard also includes content between your show and the videos that your guys' team was putting out last year, documenting some of the stuff inside the week, especially the motivation tactics from your head coach, Dan Lanning, though. I think a lot of people really came online to that the Colorado week when he was talking about not working for clicks and all those things. He seems like a great motivator. I'm curious, we see all that. What kind of stuff is he doing behind the scenes in the locker room? Is that how he's always wired, where he's looking for that motivational edge?
Yeah, I mean, literally coming in every single morning in our team room, there's always some level of motivational quote, some movie-related reference that he's always referring to always set the tone for the day. And he goes out to practice. There'd be some times, I think it was last year, it'd be cold in Eugene around like November, December, and this man would walk outside with his shirt off. You know what I'm saying? So like that man is a lunatic when it comes to like the motivational piece. But I mean, again, it really does set the tone for the day. It does set the tone for the practice. And yeah, we're just excited. That's the man that you want to run through a wall for.
What's your guys' goal this year as a team?
A national championship. We talk about that every day. We understand that the end goal is playing in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Georgia. And I mean, we work towards it every single day.
All right, that's the goal. On the field, off the field, dream podcast guest. Now that you've got your own platform, if you could pluck anyone out and have them on the show, who would it be?
Yeah, it was the late great Larry Allen before he suddenly passed. But if I had to do another podcast, I would do, if I would have somebody on my podcast, I would say Trent Williams. Trent Williams would be the second person I want to have on my podcast. And just kind of just pick his brain, understanding what he's done over the last, 14 years, I think about to be 15, his ups and downs, understanding how he's been able to last as long. So Trent Williams will be my second guest on that podcast.
All right, there we go. You know what? Clip this, tag Trent Williams in it. We'll get it out, tag the 49ers in it, and we'll do a little bit of public guest booking here. Again, the Big Mark Show, check it out. Marcus Harper going to give you a look inside the Oregon Ducks upcoming season. It's in collaboration with Sports Illustrated, and if it's anything like this interview, we know it's going to be awesome. Marcus, best of luck with the podcast. Best of luck with the season, man. We're excited to watch you guys do your thing.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff there, Dad. And listen, as someone that votes on the Joe Moore Award and gets to watch a lot of stuff for that Oregon group is one that gets talked about and is in contention every year, but it's always really impactful to us to see how much it does mean to these current teams.
Yeah, and now to see this O-line going to O-line heaven in the Big Ten, going to be a heck of a test for them.
From O-line heaven to hot take heaven, let's roll along with some offseason headlines in college football next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Fellas, we had some classic summer hot take fodder on First Take yesterday. Paul Feinbaum said that Deion Sanders could be a fit for USC if they elect to move on from Lincoln Riley after another subpar season. Now, if you're scratching your head because over 2 seasons, Riley's gone 19-8, you're not the only one. But Feinbaum not letting the facts get in the way of a good hot take. Listen to this.
Okay, maybe he does well, maybe he doesn't. But the answer is really moving forward. And I believe the answer after this season is Deion Sanders. He's going to be tired of Colorado because, quite frankly, it's not prime time. He's done well as he can with his son and Travis Hunter and all the Stephen A's and Shannon Sharp appearances, but that's going to dry up this year because they're not going to be that great. But you put prime in Tinseltown, and I think you have one of the great combinations in history.
GoJo, this is
there's so much happening.
It's for the clicks, right? Come on, this can't be serious.
Well, I mean, that entire thing, if you weren't watching that clip, I'm sitting having a good laugh at Paul Feinbaum's one Bluetooth earpiece in his ear. Yeah. And then they pan out and I see Stephen A. in an entirely purple suit. Every aspect of it in purple. And Lord knows First Take loves talking about fashion. And then we get to the take itself. Dad, it's not tailor-made for Tinseltown. That's a take tailor-made for First Take because in my mind, and I love Paul Feinbaum. I don't want this twisted any other way. I want this fully in the context. Paul Feinbaum is one of the most entertaining people doing this job. Listening to callers on the Paul Feinbaum show is one of my favorite pastimes. Full stop. That being said, I think this take is completely wrong here. Almost as wrong as the purple on purple on purple Stephen A's got going on right there. Unless that's for a cause that I don't know about here, don't come for me. Dad, this take, I mean, and one of the things that's cited here, obviously, forget the fact that a week ago Paul Feinbaum called Colorado an irrelevant program, but him saying that this would be grounded in recruiting is also ignoring the reality of the situation that we've seen in Colorado, which is that Deion Sanders has actually had no interest in going out and truly recruiting at the high school level, not leaving the state of Colorado to do that, not leaving his home to do that, as they've been largely a portal-based outfit in Colorado that has really neglected in some people's minds recruiting. So all that aside, yeah, this is great for right now when you want to make sure that people tune into First Take.
Yeah, he is. We know Deion has enlisted his son and Travis to receive tweets about recruiting from recruits. He doesn't go out. So, yeah, you have to be all in on that. And Deion just at this point is not. It is about the portal. Now, if he were to USC, would it be more high profile? Would he be more invested? I don't know. And we know that wherever he is, you're going to have a spotlight. I get that. But at the end of the day, it's got to turn into wins and losses, right? And it's just, no, he's been in Colorado 1 year. It started out great. The world went crazy. Every, celebrity wanted to be on the sideline, to that quietly dissipating when they started getting, beat by everybody. And I imagine the same thing's going to happen this year. They're going to get beat more than they're going to win. They're going to be under 500 again. Shador and Travis are both going to leave. And then is Deion going to stay at a program that he's going to have trouble building, quite honestly? Or is he going to look to move on somewhere else? Or is he going to look to get out of coaching now that he would be done coaching his kids, both two on Colorado along with Travis Hunter as well? So I don't know the answer to that, but I think I agree with you. I don't think the answer is if USC is looking for a coach that Deion's the guy to bring in, because while it will be very Tinseltown-esque in the beginning, there has to be some substance to it. And right now, we're just not seeing a lot of that at Colorado.
Yeah, I don't think USC is necessarily struggling for the attention economy here. And Colorado had a massive boom in that. There's no other way to slice it. What Deion Sanders has done for the attention paid to that program and the noise around it. And I don't mean that in a negative light. I do mean that in a positive light. College game day, all the celebrities coming there. Yeah. If you're Colorado, you're beside yourself, because that's great for season ticket packages and it's great for selling merch and all these things. We're still waiting for it to translate into wins. And you're right. for USC that now stands on the precipice of a big challenge going stylistically to a conference in the Big Ten that's been the polar opposite of what they've represented in recent years. And Dad, in a year where they've undergone a huge overhaul, right, for Lincoln Riley and company, getting D'Anton Lynn on the other side of the football, moving away, and finally getting I think meaningfully addressing the defensive coaching staff on that side of the ball, in addition to all the talent they tried to portal there last year, to go along with a new quarterback situation now that Caleb Williams is left. This is a huge year for Lincoln Riley. He's shown, and he gets the benefit of the doubt, that, hey, you've been able to find the quarterback each and every time. He's got a string of Heisman Trophy winners in his wake, and with what we saw with Miller Moss in the bowl game there, who knows? It seems like the production could be fine there, but they've addressed a bunch of other areas of the program that struggled mightily in the last couple of seasons as they head into a conference uniquely positioned to test them up front.
And they're just in a different area than Colorado, right? Colorado was looking to get on the map and have the spotlight on them before you even got on the field, and that's what Deion brought. He did, just as you mentioned, he did bring the spotlight, and then unfortunately didn't bring enough wins, at least in year one, where USC is not about that. USC is about getting wins right now. It's about being in a push for the playoffs. That's where USC is. So they're in different spots. So I'm with you. I don't see this Deion Sanders fit if in fact the USC job opened up.
A much more real headline from yesterday was what went on at the start of ACC Media Days. Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, at a precarious time in college football for all these leaders, came out with a pretty strong stance on the future of this conference. Take a listen.
We will fight to protect the ACC and our members for as long as it takes. We are confident in this league and that it will remain a premier conference in college athletics for the long-term future. These disputes continue to be extremely damaging, disruptive, and incredibly harmful to the league. The fact is that every member of this conference willingly signed the grant of rights and unanimously, and quite frankly, eagerly agreed to our current television contract and the launch of the ACC network. The ACC, our collective membership and conference office, deserves better. The ACC will remain a healthy and vibrant conference that competes at the highest level.
Dad, it sounds like a State of the Union address because that's exactly what it is at this point in time for college football. And what I will say for Jim Phillips is I think he threaded a pretty difficult needle yesterday and coming out and obviously planting their flag, as we saw. Brett Yormark at Big 12 Media Days say that they're the third best conference in college football behind the Big 10 and the SEC. And Jim Phillips coming out and assuring, he said, we're third place to nobody here. We're absolutely in that top three, but also having to juggle the elephant in the room that Clemson and Florida State are currently embattled in a lawsuit, but also will probably be the two best teams in the conference this year. And I thought he managed to strike that balance incredibly well at a difficult time as the ACC is trying to make sure they're still fully inserted into that competition of the haves in college football and not the have-nots.
Yeah, everybody's still trying to figure out what the hell grant of rights actually means. And going through you read articles about people saying, what does it actually mean? Well, I think one of the things it means for Florida State is Florida State would love to get out of that conference, but neither of the big two want them right now, right? The Big Ten or the SEC, who have both grown. The Big Ten, to 18 teams or whatever it is right now. And the SEC adding Texas and Oklahoma, they don't want to add anymore. So there's really no place for Florida State. And if you want to throw Clemson in there in this lawsuit, you can. But really, I think Florida State, I think they would love to get out and feel like they should be in one of the top two conferences. But there's, at this point, no room at the inn for any new teams, at least at this point. In the Big Ten and the SEC. We'll see what happens in the future there. But right now, this is one of those where the lawyers are going to get really, really more rich than anything else because this is where the battle is going to take place in the courtrooms.
And soon enough, the battle will take place again on the field. We'll have plenty more time to look ahead of that to see if Florida State and Mike Norvell can draft off last year's success with a very new roster and still find their way back to the top of the ACC. But for here and now, Jim Phillips holding strong as the leader of this conference. Coming up next, let's get more Irish involved here. Cole Kmet from the Chicago Bears going to help kick off training camp coverage next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Fellas, the Bears will hold their 4th training camp practice today, the first one open to the public, so fans are going to get a look at their new quarterback. Let's go. Reports out of camp yesterday coming out and saying that Caleb Williams has shown great improvement from his first 2 camp sessions, and head coach Matt Eberflus echoed that sentiment to the media.
That's a real operation, and I see that operation getting better every single day. You can see that out there. The pre-snap penalties are down, getting in and out of the huddle is good, and that's just because we're learning the system, learning how to do it, and we're learning how to break the huddle, get to the line of scrimmage, and operate our motions and shifts and make our calls. And I think it's really been good. And Caleb is the apex of that. He's just got to keep getting better at it and keep progressing every single day.
So Williams going to have a ton of weapons around him to help him out. He's got veteran Keenan Allen. He's got fellow first-round pick Rome Odunze. He's also got holdovers from last season. He's got DJ Moore. He's got Cole Kmet. And Senior had a chance to catch up with the Bears tight end to talk about the expectations for this season and what he's been seeing from his rookie QB.
Cole, appreciate the time this morning as you're getting ready for your 5th year in the NFL. And boy, oh boy, I don't know if you want to call it pressure, but a lot being said about your Chicago Bears and the direction you're going. How are you feeling about them right now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's been a lot of hype now coming into this year. We're obviously very excited about it. We're excited about the team that we got, the squad we got. Looks like, we got a lot of guys returning from our defense last year, a lot of good additions offensively. So we're excited to see where this thing goes. We're putting the work in during camp. We got a lot of work to do here over the next couple of weeks before we start the regular season, but we're looking forward to it.
Before we get into some of the changes, you mentioned the defense a lot staying the same and really playing well at the end of the year. A lot of changes on the offensive side. 5th year now. Go back to your rookie year going to camp and now your 5th year as this wily veteran going to camp and the difference that you feel going into camps.
Yeah, well, year one, it's like deer in the headlights, and you walk in and you got guys like Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, all those type of dudes up front that you got to block. And in your rookie year, it was not easy, but definitely a humbling experience, and you learn a lot. And but it's tough for sure that first year. So kind of going into year 5 now, there's a little more confidence to you. You're not as worried going in every day about who you're going to block and how you're going to hold up and all those things. So definitely a lot more confidence, and the difference couldn't be more stark.
Certainly the difference of going in rookie year and now going and being the man and knowing that you're the man. It's a cool thing. And you mentioned Offensively, some changes. Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DeAndre Swift. We'll get to even Caleb Williams, but it's you and DJ Moore basically coming back as the guys who know each other. Talk about the job of getting all the new players and you guys to gel.
Yeah, well, what helps is that we got a lot of veteran guys, obviously, except for Caleb and Rome, so we're bringing them along. But Keenan's been around for a long time. Obviously, DJ and myself have been working together, and DeAndre Swift, who we just got in free agency, is another guy who's played a little bit now. So we got a lot of veteran guys who know what they're doing out there. It's a very familiar offense for a lot of these guys. So I feel like we've been gelling really well to start off camp, and we're really just trying to help bring along these young guys, and I think we've been bringing along so far. So it's been looking good.
Well, going on that offense, as you just talked about, people familiar with, Shane Waldron takes over as the offensive coordinator. So talk about some of the differences you've been used to in the past and Shane's offense and the expectations.
Yeah, well, obviously a lot of teams right now are running that West Coast offense, what you see from the Rams, Niners, that whole deal. So that's kind of the system I've been in since being in the league, is this West Coast offense. So obviously there's some different verbiage here and there from coordinator to coordinator, but it's been great. I mean, Shane's been a great teacher for all of us. He's really allowed us to take control of this offense with the guys that we got. So that's been a lot of fun, but different verbiages here and there, but Shane's been great so far. And, I've really liked how we've progressed from the beginning of OTAs up till now so far in training camp.
I always am interested, and I like to have you take the fans, players, or people who can never get on the field inside. When you say the verbiage is different, especially with the offense. Defensive side, my side of the ball, hell, our calls were so easy. Offensive side, it's a little bit different on the verbiage. So talk about that for a minute. Just, is it truly like a different language that you have to learn?
Yeah, sure. I always compare it to, if you ever, I don't speak multiple languages, but I've always heard that if you can learn to speak one foreign language, you can then learn the other ones become much more easier. I think that's very similar to football. So, my first year in the league, your mind's going everywhere trying to learn an offense. But once you're able to learn one offense, then you're kind of able to carry over that process to every other offense you need to learn. So, I've now been, this is my third offense that I've been in, and I feel like it's easier and easier to learn them and pick them up as you play longer and longer. And I think that's just kind of part of it. But for these rookies, it's definitely a lot being thrown at you in the first couple of weeks, and you can see them. You see them how they struggled the first couple of weeks, but now guys are really, really getting to it.
Well, talking about rookies, you have a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams, who was named the starter, and I think that was a good move. Just name him, have him be the starter, take over the huddle, and be the guy. You talk about these, offensive play calls when it's a longer call, and part of it is yours, part of it's the O-line, part of it's receivers, whatever. But the quarterback's got to know it all. So as you mentioned, your quarterback is a rookie. He's got to digest that whole playbook. How has the Caleb Williams progression gone?
Well, I think it's been good so far. You can see his want to learn, which is pretty cool to see. The talent's all there, and this kid can play football. And when you see him get to the post-snap stuff, it's pretty special with the scramble and the arm motion, the arm talent, the ability to layer the football. So for him, it's really just going to be about mastering the operation. That's going to be his number one thing. And, learning how to command a huddle, use the cadences as a weapon, all those type of things, and be able to read defenses, recognize fronts, see safety rotation. Those are all things that he's going to have to pick up throughout this training camp period. And, I think he's done a good job so far with it. And he'll just continue to get more and more looks as the preseason goes. So, yeah, I think a lot for his stuff is just going to be that pre-snap and mastering the operation. And from there, I think the sky's the limit.
For those that don't know about you, fifth year, you have already had 9 different quarterbacks in your offense. Yeah. I'm sure you'd like to keep one for a while now, but in those different quarterbacks, again, taking people down on the field, how different is ball delivery with quarterbacks, and how much can that help and or hurt?
Yeah, everyone's got a different motion. Everyone's got everyone's got a different little tail on the ball, whatever it might be. So, getting with your guys in the offseason, especially new quarterbacks, it's really important to learn their ball path and how they throw balls, how they layer certain balls, all of their timing with the routes. Those are all really big. So, Definitely not easy to transitioning from quarterback to quarterback, but I think so far it's been pretty seamless with Caleb. Obviously a really special arm talent, and the ball comes out really clean from him. So that's been really cool to see, and I think guys have been picking up on it pretty quickly here.
What's been the talk amongst the players about this year? Because a lot of analysts, including former players like myself, are looking for a big jump from this team, a team you've been 4 years and haven't had a winning record yet. So what's the talk amongst the players about where this team can go?
Well, obviously the big goal is always Super Bowl. That's what you're always talking about. There's only 32 teams in the league, and everyone's going after one thing, and that's Super Bowl. But I think when you get to the camp portion, you gotta break it down in sections here throughout the season. So, camp are really just focusing on day to day here. We're getting better on one thing each day, and trying to stack these days up until the first preseason game, and then see improvement throughout the preseason. And then when you get to the season, the regular season, it's 1 week at a time. You got to go 1-0 every week, and we got to take 1 week each week for what it is. And after that, we'll kind of look up and see where we're at. But we can't look too much big picture wise. Once we get into the weeds here with the season, we just got to take it week to week. And I think from that standpoint, we'll have a good process, and I think we'll like the result if we handle it that way.
Well, a lot of people are going to be able to see your guys' process during camp. You guys are on Hard Knocks on HBO, so you have the cameras around. Who have been some of the personalities, well, I guess I'll put it that way, that have kind of shown through early on?
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see. I think we got a lot of personalities, so it'll be interesting to see who they air and what they are on the show in the next coming weeks. But it feels like everyone's got a camera in their face at this point during practice. There's obviously a lot of hoopla going on with that. So I think it's just about embracing that aspect of it, and also being able to lock in and focus on what's important here, and that's the football. So it is what it is with the Hard Knocks deal, and I think it'll be cool to see it when it airs. But in the meantime, we got to focus on what's important.
Yeah, you mentioned football. I get it, but at Notre Dame, you also were a relief pitcher. You pitched on the baseball team, and a guy years ago from Notre Dame played football as a wide receiver and then pitched in Major League Baseball, Jeff Smarja, who ended up taking the baseball route and going pitching. Was there a point where you were deciding on which way you were going to go as you were playing in both in high school and then in college?
Yeah, I think, baseball was always my first love growing up. And, I just love playing baseball, and football I still always wanted to play football, and I wanted to play both for as long as I could. And, part of my recruitment to Notre Dame with BK, Brian Kelly, was that I got to play baseball as well. And, thankful that he let me do that. And they were really great about that while I was there. So got to continue on playing both, and, finished up my third season of football, and I really wanted to play another season of baseball, but ended up getting that draft grade back, and it was hard to say no to the draft grade at the time with what was on the table. So ended up going with football there. I do miss baseball in my downtime in the summer, but I'm loving what I'm doing right now.
Good stories about the possibility of baseball coming into you professionally. And maybe we'll get some more good stories like that in the podcast that you have coming this season. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so haven't officially announced yet, but we're going to be doing something. I'm going to be doing some things like I did last year with CHGO All City, and it'll be kind of like my own little personal podcast here with Adam Hogue helping out a little bit throughout the season. So we'll be doing some cool player interviews, get to know the guys on the team. So all the Chicago fans that are able to watch, you'll get to know guys on the team really well, kind of see where they started, how they got here to this point, some of the things that motivate them throughout the season in their personal lives. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then obviously doing the stuff after games, kind of getting my insight on things. So we're looking forward to the podcast. So be on the lookout for the announcement here coming soon, and should be a lot of fun.
Great way for players now to let the fans get to know them, not just as football players, but off the field as well. It's a very cool thing. I wish you a lot of luck with that, and a lot of luck with the season. And hopefully the 10th quarterback will be the last quarterback you play with for a little while. You can have just one for a bit. So best of luck, Cole.
Thank you. That'd be awesome. I'm hoping for that too. That'd be great.
Yeah, you and all the rest of Chicago, Cole, on that one. I think if this doesn't work out, we might see the true Joker origin story for the entire Bears fan base develop this offseason, because, Dad, fresh off what happened with Justin Fields, too, and now them waving goodbye to him in Pittsburgh, it really is ramped up, certainly for Matt Eberflus and his staff, where this is a put up or shut up year. They thought about potentially moving on from him at the end of last season. There's a lot riding on this. And so to hear a lot of the early returns and praise from his teammates about Caleb Williams being misunderstood by the media and the outside world, and certainly what Cole mentioned about him on the field, has to be music to a lot of fans' ears as they get going.
Oh, it absolutely has to be, but you have to put it into context. You are starting a rookie quarterback. And again, fans and owners get mesmerized when one pans out like CJ Stroud. And you say, okay, well, we got that guy. Remember, there were 6 quarterbacks in the first round. The odds are 3 are going to fail. And you don't know which 3, and maybe it won't be 3. Maybe it'll be less. Maybe it'll be more. You don't know. But to go in and expect Caleb Williams to have a CJ Stroud year is a lofty expectation that you best hold off on a little bit. But the one thing you can say is Ryan Poles, the GM, definitely helped him with weapons. Getting Keenan Allen, having DJ Moore, getting Rome Odunze, getting DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. Still, they re-signed Cole Kmet last year to that deal. So he has at least weapons. So he doesn't have to put it all on his shoulders. Get the ball out to these playmakers that you got. Your defense was just absolutely stud-like at the end of the year, coming toward the end of the season. So anything close to that is going to have you in games. And that's, I think, where the defense can help the most with Mike, with a rookie quarterback, is keep you in games. Don't put you in a position to where you got to throw 40 times. I remember Ben Roethlisberger, his rookie year, when he was only throwing 17 to 20 times, they were doing well, right? And because their defense would keep them in games, they had a bit of a running game, and too much wasn't put on Ben as a rookie. You don't, even though it's more of a passing league now, you don't want a lot put on your rookie quarterback, in this case, Caleb Williams. So get the ball out, even if it's shorter passes to your receivers, get a running game going, and have your defense keep the other team in check so the score doesn't get away from you to where you have to abandon your game plan and throw all the time. That is music to a rookie quarterback's ears.
I'll be interested to see. I mean, it'd be a polar opposite of what Caleb experienced in college at USC, right? Where the defense couldn't stop anybody and they had to go out there and score 20 points on every possession. So that's the world he's used to. I'll be curious. You asked, Cole about Shane Waldron and what he's meant to this team so far. What version of Shane they get? Is it the version that wants to spread it out with more of the receiving talent that you've brought over on this team and use that personnel? Was what we saw last year in Seattle, where Pete Carroll, and this is the part I'm not sure of, was it more of a directive from Pete Carroll? Was it more of what Shane wanted, where they tightened things down? They went more 2 tight end sets. They tried to get a little bit bigger and pound the rock. Which version of that Shane Waldron DNA are we going to get this upcoming season around a rookie quarterback as they identify a lot of his strengths? Because again, the offense that Caleb came from isn't that version of the offense. And so how they marry the two together has always been the story for the NFL, especially now. So we'll wait and see on that, Dad, for the Chicago Bears and their training camp getting started, hopefully without any major headlines. The Jets, they just can't get away from it here. We talked earlier about Aaron Rodgers and everything that happened this offseason. But now as they go into training camp, they're going to be doing it without one of their star pass rushers that they went out and sought this offseason. Remember, the Jets let their homegrown talent, Bryce Huff, walk and go to Philadelphia. And so in a student exchange program, they got Hassan Reddick over here, who is now going to be holding out starting training camp. He didn't report to OTAs and now is going to be fined $50,000 a day during this holdout as he sets for an increase on that $14.5 million that he's scheduled to make this season.
Yeah, this is a guy who doesn't miss games either. You got to Arizona in 2017, played 16 games for 4 years, and the couple of years of 17 games has played 17 games. The last 4 years, he's been in double-digit sacks. Last 4 years, he's had 50.5 sacks, averaging over 12, a little over 12 a year. So he's getting the job done. He bet on himself when he left Arizona to go to Carolina. And it's paid off for him in Philly, and now he's done shorter deals, and he's looking to capitalize. Now he is going to get fined $50,000 a day, and the big thing today is you can't waive those fines. It used to be you were fined a few $100,000 for missing camp, and when you signed, they blew off the fine saying you don't owe it. Well, you owe it now, but it should be a pittance if he gets a new deal compared to what he would make. Now, he is scheduled to make $14.5 million this year, which isn't chicken feed, but he wants more. So that will be interesting. Again, it never, rarely, if ever, pays off for a guy sitting the whole season. So at some point, who blinks first here?
I'll be curious. And the $50,000 a day was during the offseason. I don't know if that changes during camp. I would have to check on that. But for Hassan Reddick, you mentioned those 50.5 sacks over the last 4 seasons. That's 4th most in the NFL right now. He is 30. The $15 million a year average has him 20th amongst edge players right now. And if you're looking at some of his peers, Dad, obviously at the top of that 30-year-old group, which I was surprised to see he was 30, TJ Watt tipping the scales there as the highest paid in terms of average per year at just over $28 million. Danielle Hunter, who also got moved this offseason down to the Houston Texans, he's making $24.5 million a year. And this is what happens when you trade for a player. It was a conditional third, but you traded assets to bring Hassan Reddick over here. And usually with that, it puts a lot of leverage on the player's side in getting a new contract done because you went out there. You didn't move a ton in terms of assets, but this is a guy that does fit a need for a Jets team that's trying to supplement some of what they lost. So hopefully this gets hammered out soon, and hopefully Hassan Reddick gets the payday that he richly deserves. Because, Dad, to your point, all we ask of these guys is go out there and earn it, go out there and put it on wax. At least 11 sacks in each of the last 4 seasons. I'd say that's earning it and then some if you're a player around this league and trying to send a message to the rest of this Jets locker room as they get started with camp. We're going to continue rolling along with training camp. Coming up next, we got it started yesterday. Division preview season has finally arrived here at GoJo and Golic. We will get to potentially the toughest division in all of the NFL. The AFC North preview starts next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., And guys, we have football in 2 weeks, okay? Hall of Fame game between the Texans and the Bears will be played next Thursday night. So leading up to the game, we are going to be previewing every division in football. Now, as a reminder, here's how we're going to be breaking it down. Yesterday, we did AFC South. Today, we're on to AFC North. Wednesday, the AFC East. Thursday, the AFC West. Friday, we're going to bring it on back and do a full AFC outlook. So we're going to start with the runner-up Ravens here. GoJo Senior, do you guys think that the Ravens are going to be able to stabilize their offensive line? What is our outlook?
Yeah, Dad, it's interesting looking and considering Baltimore heading into this season in a lot of areas. Now, courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook, they are still the odds-on favorite to win the division, but it's by a pretty slim margin. They're plus 140. The Cincinnati Bengals nipping at their heels at plus 145. So odds makers not seeing a lot of difference as the Bengals get Joe Burrow back, but Jesse's point is absolutely right. In a season where there's a lot of questions, the defensive brain drain on the other side of the football as they lose their defensive coordinator, their D-line coach, and their secondary coach on a team whose defense was all-time great levels last year. Offensively in front of Lamar Jackson, you could say similar things as they lose Kevin Zeitler, who played at a Pro Bowl level last year, John Simpson, one of their tackles, and Morgan Moses. How they go about integrating a group that still rotated tackles last year, so they've got some depth, and I think will talent-wise be fine there. That is enough newness that they're going to have to work out at the beginning of the season where I would raise a little bit of an alarm, but between getting Todd Monken back for year 2 as your offensive coordinator and having the youngest 2-time MVP, I believe, in NFL history and Lamar Jackson as your quarterback, I think you've got the perfect environment there to help get those guys up to speed pretty quickly.
Well, to start out with Mark Andrews healthy in the year, remember he got hurt last year, and to have Derrick Henry in the backfield, I think can help mitigate the O-line a little bit until they get up to hopefully snuff of losing 3 players there. So I feel good about their offense. I feel better about their defense compared to Cincinnati, which we're going to get to. This Baltimore defense, they pick up Nate Wiggins, the corner from Clemson, in the first round. Even though they lost some coaches, they stayed within for the coordinator and Zach Orr, who was a player on this team from 14 to 16, 17 to 20. He was a defensive analyst for Baltimore, then went to Jacksonville for a year. Then he came back as the inside linebacker coach in Baltimore, now the coordinator. So hiring from within, keeping basically the same system that has gone on, even though you lose, a couple of defensive players as well, including a Patrick Queen. I like this defense. The defense, I always talk about that side of the ball, keeping you in games. That's what this defense can certainly do. Rarely do they let a game get away from them. Then when you have a 2-time MVP on the other side, you're just waiting for them. You're wondering if it's just bad timing award, like playing against Michael Jordan and the Bulls in Michael Jordan's heyday. You're playing against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes' heyday. So it's tough to get one over on them as they go for a three-peat this year. So sometimes time and circumstances kind of dictate how it goes. We've already talked about that with Buffalo. If they missed their window with Josh Allen and some of the talent to overtake Kansas City, is it now focused mainly on Baltimore trying to do that? But everybody looking up at Kansas City right now.
Yeah, certainly Baltimore in that juncture, but I think they're firmly in the window. This is an incredibly talent-rich roster with the names that you mentioned there. Specifically, the offensive line question, I think they'll be fine. I think Ben Cleveland is slotted in at right guard right now, and Andrew Voorhees, who was kind of on a redshirt program, he was the offensive lineman, great player out of USC that tore his knee up during the combine process, and so they're waiting for him. Could be guys that absolutely able to come in and replace here, but I think what they had to grow into as an offense because of the injury to Mark Andrews last year, going to pay dividends for them this year. Mark still has so much time under task with Lamar, but we saw Zay Flowers in the massive rookie season that we have. We saw Isaiah Likely. We saw what they were able to do out of 11 personnel last year. They ran 11 personnel, just one tight end on the field, only 12% of the time under Greg Roman. They ran it nearly 50% of the time last year. Again, necessity's the mother of all invention, but they were so productive out of that in an offense that also gets to add Derrick Henry to what was the NFL's best rushing attack last year. So So the Zach Orr thing, we'll wait and see. Mike McDonald, an incredibly gifted coordinator in terms of what they did, barely ever blitzing, but getting a lot of the same effect with a lot of the simulated pressure stuff there. It was a standard-bearing defense that now has branched off into the rest of the NFL with some of the hires that are out there. They would still be my pick to win the division. I think they're still absolutely going to be my pick to probably face the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, but it's a crowded division over here. That leads us to our next team, Dad, the Cleveland Browns. Fascinating going into this year. As I mentioned, the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals 1-2 in terms of the odds-on favorites. Baltimore at plus 600 in third. And, Dad, it really all seems to center around what are they going to get out of Deshaun Watson at this point?
Oh, without question. I mean, he's a guy who's played in 12 games since he's been there because of injury or suspension, just 16 total touchdowns in 2 years. It's all based around him, right? You have Amari Cooper. You bring in a Jerry Jeudy to try and resurrect his career. David Njoku had a monster year, unbelievably athletic tight end who benefited from the 4 different quarterbacks, because if you're a new quarterback in a situation, you can rely on a tight end, and Njoku was a recipient of a lot of that. And so Deshaun Watson and the rehab of Nick Chubb, one of the best running backs in the league, bad knee injury last year, and rehabbing from that, when can he hit full strength coming back, I think is a big, big question. Defense has been stellar for them. You got Myles Garrett pushing the pocket on the defensive line. So I like where they are defensively. This one falls on the question mark of Deshaun Watson. Every other owner hated the deal that Haslam's did, the fully guaranteed $230 million contract. I would imagine every other owner would like to see it fail, so that doesn't happen again, even though we'll get closer and closer to it possibly happening again. But that's what it's going to come down to. Can Deshaun Watson stay healthy?
Yeah, because on the other side, you talk about that defense, Dad. If the Ravens had not existed, we probably would have spent a lot more time talking about the Browns as one of the best defenses in the league. Myles Garrett got the billing, and much different defense, right? Styles make fights. The Ravens, you had this galaxy brain stuff. You had bodies coming from everywhere. Their defensive tackles were 2 and 3 in the league in dropbacks into coverage. That lets you know how crazy that was. Cleveland, it was much more straight up. It's, hey, we're going to line up in this 4-down Y9 stuff. Myles Garrett's going to tear ass off the edge at you, and we're going to strap it up and play man coverage more than almost anybody in the NFL. They led in single high safety looks in a league that's consistently been too high. I think they had the 6th most man coverage last year. And when you look at outside at Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome and that cornerback group they've got one of the best coverage units in all of football on the back end of that defense. So that group's going to be able to keep them in games. I know they tried to shore up the inside a little bit, drafting Mike Hall and trying to make sure that they can stop the run up the gut, but they're going to be fine there. You're right, Dad. That offense overall, last year the Browns had almost $56 million in average annual salary on IR at one point with the amount of players injured, certainly headlined by Deshaun Watson getting banged up himself. I don't know what reason there is to have confidence at this point, Dad, that he can be anything close to resembling the player that he was, but can they tweak the offense just enough, maybe spread things out a little bit more, which we've seen hints of, to try and make him comfortable enough to at least get better out of him? Because we saw last year, Joe Flacco walked off the couch and had that team looking like a true contender down the stretch until the wheels fell off in the playoffs. Deshaun Watson doesn't have to be prime Deshaun Watson. He's just got to be better than what we've seen so far, and I don't think that's asking too much for how much you paid the guy.
Yeah, they can't hang the defense out to dry as much as they did last year. They put a lot on them, and occasionally the defense gave in to that. It is an excellent defense, much like we talked about the Baltimore defense. This Cleveland defense can keep you in games as long as you don't, put the world on their shoulders and wear them out. The offense has got to come through, and it's coming through on 2 question marks. Again, Nick Chubb's health and rehab, and Deshaun Watson's play. I mean, I don't know where else to go but there. You saw they actually got to the playoffs with 4 quarterbacks. Now they have 1. And I think Jameis Winston bringing in as the backup was a pretty good move, even though he was a 30-30 guy, 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions a few years back. You hope to not have to use him, but I think that's not bad shape.
I think more important for me, Ken Dorsey comes over as your offensive coordinator after getting fired at Buffalo last year. What does that version of the offense look like? And I'll still continue to point to Bill Callahan doesn't live here anymore. That banged up offensive line going to be without one of the best O-line coaches in the NFL as he's now with the Tennessee Titans. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. As division previews roll along, we got the AFC North today. We've talked about the Ravens and the Browns, Dad. Let's get to the Steelers. Now, they have the worst odds to win the division according to DraftKings Sportsbook at a distant plus 800, going into a year where they've got two new quarterbacks in their room on bargain bin deals, a new offensive coordinator, former head coach Arthur Smith joining them now, and a coach in Mike Tomlin, Dad, that really for the first time in my adult lifetime got questions about his job security last season. So I'd ask broadly before we can get to the quarterback room, what do you expect as the ceiling for this Pittsburgh Steelers team this year? Is it just what we've usually seen as, hey, Mike Tomlin, they're above 500 and they probably make the playoffs?
I think that's the expectation. Anything more would be a surprise. Anything less below 500 certainly would be a disappointment. That would be the first time in 17 years for Mike Tomlin if he were to finish under 500. But I don't know if the expectations are much more than that. Pittsburgh, which has been built around a defense for years, the defense was mid-level at best against the pass and the run. You did have 47 sacks, which kept you in the upper third, but TJ Watt had 19 of those. So, he was obviously the main sack guy there. So I think a normally defensive-led team is not as strong defensively as we've seen. So we'll see what they can do offensively. This is now Arthur Smith taking over for, heading with Russell Wilson, the quarterback, heading in. I think it'll be a little more, run acclimated to run to pass game. So it's going to be, I think, a dogfight for them. I don't think they're going to be passing. I don't think it's a team, if you're down 14, that's going to be great at coming back. I think they got to get into some mudslinging, phone booth type fights to win their games. And I don't see them being a surprise, big time double-digit win team this year at all. A lot of that's based on Russell Wilson and just not really knowing what to expect. But even the weapons around him, I think they're a mid-level team.
I think the offense should be better than it was last year, though, by and large, right? Or at least better than the Matt Canada era. Like, we saw Matt Canada just not ready to be an NFL offensive coordinator. Yeah. At this time. Arthur Smith, say what you want about his ability to use some of the high-end weapons that we saw when he was in Atlanta, right? You had all these top 10 picks at skill positions that he just decided he didn't really feel like using. You're going to get to a Pittsburgh team now that has usually been largely tight end based in terms of what they're going to attack there. And you've got Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington, so you've got the room to do it. The receiver room, George Pickens, not a guy that you're going to say, oh, well, why isn't Matt Canada featuring him more? He's really your only true option. So he's going to find a way to get the football. And that backfield's been a two-headed monster. So I worry less about what happened with Bijan Robinson last year and look more at, hey, Arthur Smith has always had a really compelling play-action passing game, which can help both of these quarterbacks and try and get them online. I would say both of these quarterbacks, Dad, I would trust more than Kenny Pickett, who, listen, had a disservice done to him in terms of his football development early in his career for all the reasons that he mentioned. The thing that I kind of worry about with this team more so is the fact that you're going to have two true rookies, and then Broderick Jones, who's a second-year player, all starting on your offensive line. Yep. It's a young group that you're going to ask to come together pretty quickly in this new offensive circumstance.
And I think that's going to be a tough ask, given the fact that you do have George Pickens on the outside, but you don't have a lot more than that. Can they rely on a running game with this offensive line, with the two-headed monster of Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris? I think a lot will fall in this O-line, and I think it could be a bit of a struggle, especially early with a couple of rookies in there. So again, I'm looking at a little over, a 9-8, because you can't be 500 anymore with 17 games. We'll have to wait till we get to 18 games. I see them being that 9-8, 10 wins at the most, and maybe 8 wins. I see them being right in that area there.
Listen, I'm not going to pick the Steelers to be under 500 because Mike Tomlin's shown that's the floor. No matter what, they're going to be over 500, and he still lives there until further notice. I do believe in enough of the pillars on that team, the Cam Haywards, the TJ Watts of the world, especially defensively, to make that happen. But outside of that, I can't predict the playoff wins that Steelers fans desperately want at this point. The reason there's been frustration is because appearances and that novelty of staying above 500 aren't good enough at a place that's filling building its trophy case and always has been with Lombardi's. I don't think it's reasonable to expect more than that this year. I will be interested to see what this low stakes gamble on the quarterback room yields for them, because I do think the floor is automatically higher than what you had last year offensively. It's just you're in the wrong division for that. As we get to the last team, Dad, the Cincinnati Bengals. Now that you've got Joe Burrow back online, that's the reason so many people look at this division and say, yeah, the Steelers, you can be marginally better and it not be good enough because of what you've got looking outward. Joe Burrow, how do you expect them to bring him along coming off this injury? Is it as simple as you go right back to the spread it out, let Joe Burrow dictate the terms, or do you think there's anything they take from what they had last year during the backup quarterback experience without him?
No, I think they have to get him going and do his thing. They're going to have to rely on this offense. Can't rely a lot on this defense. His defense was not very good last year. So this is going to be an offense that has to outscore you in probably maybe higher scoring games. And I think you got to let Joe Burrow do his thing by doing that and spread the ball out to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Jamar Chase. I'm sorry. I think this has to be that high flying offense to make up for a defense that struggled.
Yeah, the defense was a bad bet on the back end. They've tried to renew that now. Von Bell's back over here. They went and traded for got Geno Stone out of their rival Baltimore Ravens group there. Sheldon Rankins up front comes in as they tried to draft their way to shoring up a run defense that was bad last year. Tackling was bad last year. So they've at least tried to address some of those things and move around pieces in the secondary to help that side of the football. On the other side, Dad, they just seem content to try and tick off every wide receiver on the team's organization. Yep. Now we knew the T. Higgins situation. The writing was on the wall there. Going to play out the franchise tag this year and probably not be a member of that team as the Joe Burrow contract mounted up for this Bengals team. But now we get Cincinnati Bengals team president Mike Brown coming out and saying essentially the Jamar Chase deal probably unlikely, as we watched every wide receiver get paid this offseason, including his LSU classmate Justin Jefferson, who broke the bank and likely is viewed as the model for this. Dad, are you surprised that they didn't opt to just get out of the way and do this deal that they all know is coming?
Yeah, I am surprised at that they haven't gotten it done. You basically know where they're for players like this, you basically know what the numbers are going to be. So to not get it done, I think is a mistake, because T. Higgins will be playing on the franchise tag, and then you're going to deal with him next year again. So why have both to deal with next year? Why not get Jamar Chase out of the way? I don't understand it, quite honestly. We'll see if it still can get done. They obviously have time before the season starts to get it done, but I would be surprised if they didn't. This seems like one of the easier no-brainers. And Mike Brown has even said, listen, after Joe Burrow, it's Jamar Chase. He's the guy. So he's the guy. Justin Jefferson set the parameters, so basically what the numbers are going to be. I don't know why you don't just get this thing done. That way you're locked into knowing what your numbers are going forward for the rest of the team.
I know Bengals fans bristle at this in modern times because your team's been successful, especially since Joe Burrow came here, but it's not helping Mike Brown beat the cheap allegations to have this be a headline going into training camp for a team that's introducing its money quarterback back to a team that has tried to continue to beef up the offensive line. We've talked ad nauseum about the size in their tackle room with Orlando Brown, who had a good season last year, Trent Brown coming over as well, and then drafting Amarius Mims out of Georgia to ensure that your quarterback stops getting hit as much as he has, because injury is the one thing that can undo this team. Give Zach Taylor credit. They kept their heads above water last year when Joe Burrow went down admirably. But the Super Bowl ceiling on this team is back in town now. And it's going to be a wait and see on what version of Joe Burrow we get back now that he's been playing piano in his rehab and all that stuff. He talked about his football mortality. They need the MVP conversation, Joe Burrow, the top 5 quarterback in the league, to show back up there, to get back in the conversation with a Baltimore Ravens team that until further notice is the standard for that division. The standard in studio coverage in the NBA has long time been on TNT. Coming up next, not dead yet apparently, after people tried to heap dirt on their grave, here on GoJo and Golic. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And if you miss us or any of our great guests here, thank you to our friend Cole Kmet, former Notre Dame great tight end, now with the Chicago Bears, for stopping by to talk training camp. And Marcus Harper, Oregon offensive lineman, starting the Big Mark Show podcast, wherever you get that, in collaboration with Sports Illustrated. If you missed that, get that wherever you get our podcast, as well as available on YouTube right as we get done here on the show. Guys, let's start off with this, that, and the third. Hope, manna from heaven yesterday, as TNT had a decision to make. We had seen at the end of basketball season this year a lot of the conversation about the future of the NBA's TV rights deal. Amazon swooping in, we thought was going to big dog everybody else, including TNT, which would have meant the end of Inside the NBA, the greatest running studio show in the history of broadcast television here. Now, with the deadline yesterday, TNT announced that it had submitted a matching offer to retain its NBA broadcast rights with its intent to continue producing the beloved studio show Inside the NBA. So, Dad, it gets a little more complicated from here because they matched a part of the deal. We don't know which part necessarily, but the bottom line is, at the very least, TNT is going to be able to look at its audience and say that we tried to save the show that you guys all love.
They matched the deal that for Amazon. There was ESPN, NBC, and Amazon. Amazon, it's about $1.8 million a year. TNT had been paying about $1.8 billion. $1.4 billion. TNT had been paying up to this point about $1.4 billion. They matched the Amazon offer. Now, we'll have to wait and see which one the NBA takes, because Amazon sweetened the pot a little bit by paying multiple years up front in an escrow account. So they gave a few years up front of this money to try and sweeten the deal. So it'll be interesting how much pull, because the money is basically the same, though you get more up front in the escrow with Amazon, but it's basically the same that this show has, that you can keep this show together, which is unquestionably the best pregame show there is in all of sports. So how much yank does that have for the NBA to pick them over the possible matching of Amazon Prime?
Right, exactly, because Amazon to this point would still have to staff talent to call games, obviously, talent for the studio show, all these things that are variables. And while I'm sure some people are going full Patrick Star of, why don't we take this pregame show over here and put it over here? But we've seen Charles Barkley has talked about retiring after this next season, and Ernie Johnson's mentioned that he would be staying at Turner, and all these complicated factors that, who knows, could be solved by Amazon doing what they've done traditionally, is saying, we got more money than everybody else, and going check for check and bill for bill for with us is a pretty dangerous prospect. And I don't know how it shakes out, Dad. I think I'm with everyone else where we all just hope the same studio show that we have been watching and entertained by gets to continue to go out until it's on its own terms and not because of the financials of the NBA picture creeping into the frame. So we'll wait and see on that. Jesse, in the meantime, let's get to that here. Is what everyone's been waiting for. The Olympic bed review finally just dropped. Let's see what the sexcapades have to offer.
Yeah, so you guys remember in 2020 in Tokyo, it came out that there were these cardboard beds that the Olympians were going to be sleeping on. So the bed frame is made of cardboard. And thank the Lord, Tom Daley doing the Lord's work. He went in and gave us his bed review for Paris. Thank you, Tom.
For those wondering about the cardboard beds in the village, I'm going to show you what they look like. This is cardboard. As you can see, it's like a box. Then you've got the mattress, and then these cardboard boxes here, like so, with the mattress on top and a mattress topper. And then we get our own little Paris 24. And as you can see, they're pretty sturdy.
Okay, the last part was on purpose because these are called anti-sex beds. Okay, everybody was saying they're anti-sex beds because everyone knows the Olympians do be going at it in the Olympic Village. There's going to be 300,000 condoms handed out at the Paris Olympics. Don't worry, they tapered that down for Tokyo in 2020. It was only $150,000 because COVID, So they were trying to be good about keeping your distance. But here's my thing. You are an Olympic athlete. You have competed your whole life to get to this point, and now you gotta sleep on a little twin bed held up by the goddamn pieces of cardboard. I would be pissed.
Jesus, we can tell you're pissed, Jess. What I'd say is this, too. You're right. That was my first thought was these are the best athletes in the world who get one crack at this every 4 years, and this is what we're doing to them because you don't want, like, we lifted the intimacy ban. That was going on in Tokyo because of that. You can be intimate again, and we know they like to be intimate at this. It's just what happens at the Olympics. It's par for the course here. But, Dad, I will say this. He jumps up and down on it, and it appears to hold up fine. It appears to be sturdy enough. I went and looked up the factuals on this, and Tom Daly is a diver from England who weighs about 165 pounds. I'm sorry. There's going to be some beef out here in the Olympic Village. I need to see someone who is 225 plus do that same test and see whether or not we're talking about a guy whose feet all of a sudden crash through to the floor.
Okay, but let's be clear. These are Olympic athletes, like we said. If they're trying to get intimate, they're flexible. They're all really athletic. They don't necessarily need a bed for that, okay?
No,
Listen,
they don't. I'm just saying for the sleep part, I want this for the big guys. The sex they can all figure out. They're clever enough to do that.
I was going to say, for those that want to have sex at the Olympics, they're going to find a way. They don't care, bed, floor, whatever. They don't care. They're gonna find a way. This is about getting the proper sleep before your event. And you're right, Mike. You did see him jump up and down on it. It felt pretty sturdy, but he is a wee man. Let's see if the heavier guys, it's comfortable for them. The sex part will figure itself out. If two people are wanting to do it, they're going to find a way to do it and make use of those 300,000 condoms.
They do be doing it.
Yeah. I need like one of the bigger men's Olympic track athletes, like a shot putter or someone throwing the hammer, to go and do that same bit of jumping on the bed and just give me that side-by-side visual of that thing completely crashing to the ground there. Big fellas, I know, listen, I carry that same fear every time I sit down in a chair or something I know isn't quite sturdy enough. When you sit at a restaurant, you feel a weaker wooden chair sort of creak underneath you. It gives you the heebie-jeebies. Got to do it for content. We need you on this one.
I mean, Wemby won't even fit into that bed. What are they going to do for him?
I misunderstood when you said throwing the hammer.
Like lengthwise?
Throwing the hammer. I thought you meant the track and field and not the
boy. A lot of length and hammer conversations here that I'm going to steer us away from here. And Westside walk us, Jesse, into the third. The thing we all saw coming, getting here a little bit faster than I expected.
Yeah, Connor Stalions, just when we thought we were out, he pulls us back in. So apparently Netflix is doing a documentary series called Untold, and there's going to be an episode about the Michigan sign stealing story. And we're being told Connor Stalions going to be in this episode, and he is going to, for the first time, give his side of the story. Guys, I'm all ears. I cannot wait for this, honestly. I want to hear his side of the story because I feel like he's going to come up with something. It's so crazy. There's something we don't know, and it's going to come out.
I disagree with that, Jesse. The Untold documentary series on Netflix has been flatly a disappointment at almost every turn because they've seemed him to trade access to these characters for a complete lack of desire to give us the answers that we want to the questions that we want. In every one of these, from the Florida documentary to the Johnny Manziel one, we've never really addressed the interesting parts of what went on in any of these. And so I'm sure we're going to hear Connor Stalions talk a bunch in a bunch of PR stuff approved by Michigan and approved by Jim Harbaugh and everybody else that he wants to make sure to keep protecting, I'm sure. So if you're tuning into the Untold series for juicy details about previously unknown aspects of interesting parts of the sports that we love, you're looking at the wrong place.
No, he's going to flip the narrative. He's coming out and he's going to burn all the bridges. I know it.
Listen, I hope he does because I love Netflix for the shows that I watch, but not the docuseries. They haven't had one yet that has been worth it or held my interest. So Jesse, for the sake of me spending time watching it, I hope you're right. I hope it's better than the others, but I fear it's going to be like the others or we're going to get a whole lot of nothing.
Can't we wait a little bit too? What happened to creating a little bit of intrigue with time? This just happened. We know how this all went down.
Because he wants to tell his side of the story. He's ready.
I hope Jesse is building this up.
We're going to build this up. No ifs, ands, or buts about what we'll deliver around here. If you agree, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.